And this is Web 36 with Gabriel. We are doing DOM 1 today. All right, so we have 4 objectives today. And this is the repo we will be using for guided project. Now, as per instructions dropped in Slack, we need to clone this project without forking and then following the instructions in the README carefully. So I'll just go ahead and do just that. I'm going to do the green button. And again, you should do this 1 hour before lecture, which is when we will drop the link, okay? So git clone this thing. I will rename that repo to GP because it's shorter. I will cd into GP, and I will fire VS Code inside the current location. And this is the repo here, cloned without forking and opened in VS Code at the root of the project. Do not use VS Code as a file explorer. Do not open your entire hard drive with VS Code. Do not open all of your projects at once with VS Code. Open the current project only, and you should have the README there at the root. This allows you to go into the terminal menu, pop a new terminal. Depending on your operating system, if you're on the Mac, this should read Z shell, Z as H, right? If you are on Windows, it should say probably bash or git bash. Okay, so if you are on PowerShell or something evil like that, you should probably use the drop down to switch into bash. On Windows, Z shell on the Mac. Okay. This makes it so that we are already at the right location. We can learn our current location by typing pwd. So now we can type git commands, right? So I can do git status. And we are on branch main. You can branch off at this time if you wish. That keeps the main branch clean in case you want to kind of like go back to main and redo the exercise. So it is a good idea that you branch off. All right, so I'll give you a second to do that. In the meantime, I will run a script which you do not need to run. Prep start GP. This is a little script of mine. It's just going to commit work and push it at regular intervals, right? So you can reset your branch to mine, okay? So if you get lost with guided project and fall behind, all you need to do is making sure you are right inside the project. You need to run this project in the terminal, all right? So if you fall behind, use the split button there to open a clean terminal, and just paste that command and enter, and you should reset to the instructor's branch. I'm pushing code automatically around every 40 seconds or so. Occasionally, the code pushed will be a little bit broken, okay? So I'm not manually pushing stuff to GitHub. It's happening automatically every minute or so, all right? Now, let's take a look at the README. And the README says clone, we did that. Navigate into the project, we did that. npm install, npm start, all right? So some of you were asking about live server. Humor me and use these instead. Live server doesn't have any compilation superpowers. So if the project includes React or includes less or Sass, if the project includes any asset which cannot be consumed by the browser directly, live server is not going to compile those assets for you, all right? So to be fair, today's project doesn't contain any assets the browser cannot understand. These assets can be readily consumed inside the source folder, can be readily consumed by the browser. So you can use live server today if you want, but please try these, because if npm is not working for you, we need to fix that. We need to fix that, okay? So let's do it. I'm going to find this terminal is blocked because this is my magic script for pushing every minute or so. So I'm just going to kind of like there. Okay. I'm going to npm install. You can also type npm I, shorter. Okay. So npm install, all it does, it downloads any dependencies listed inside package.json. Right? So package.json is, among other things, is like a manifest of dependencies. Any dependencies listed there will be downloaded and added to the project inside a folder called node modules, right? Cool. So now we can npm start, right? The second script we needed to exit there. npm start compiles the project. You see more folders are getting automatically created now, right? Like a dist folder, which contains all the compiled assets, right? We code inside the source folder. We code in here. npm start is compiling the project and creating a dist folder. And furthermore, it's also serving the entire project at this address. So if you hover over this thing and click follow link, this is today's guided project. All right. Now, what if npm install and npm start didn't work for you? Then you have no choice but to open index.html with Chrome. All right. So if or use the live server extension in VS Code. That's one use case where I don't mind you using it, but you need to fix npm. You need to be able to run these commands. All right. You need a fully functioning node in npm. Okay. Also, of course, these commands need to be executed at the project location. You can't just run these commands anywhere in your hard drive. You need to be inside the project. So one advantage of using the integrated terminal is that when you pop a new terminal, you are always at the right location inside the project. Okay. Cool. So again, if Node is not working for you, you can right-click here, and there you should be able to find an Explorer or find in folder or something like that. Actually, that didn't quite work. Right? Reveal in Finder. Bam. Okay. So this index.html is what you need to be opening in Chrome, right? If npm is broken for you. So you just open that index.html and it's the same thing, right? So npm start, that npm start script is serving the project in a local web server in localhost 1234, right? If you just use Chrome or live server, well, it'll open someplace else, okay? Cool. All right, so let's take a look at the Slido. Caroline, are we still supposed to be creating first name, last name branches? I recommend that you do. Because then you can always type the command git checkout main, and that returns to the initial state of a guided project. So you can do it again, all right? If you work on main, well, that's fine, but it's kind of more painful to try and go back to the beginning, if that makes sense. All right, so the Slido is clean, either with just using Chrome or live server or some other means. You have, apologies for switching windows so fast. You have the project, you have the Lambda cat open however you can through the file system with a file menu, or with npm install and npm start, in which case you should see there localhost 1234. All right. So we are ready to get started with the objectives. Okay. This is your first objective, and it's all about explaining what the DOM is. I'm going to explain it in 10 seconds, and then you're going to type it out in Slack so that I know that you understood. Okay, so ready? All right. So the DOM is a collection of buttons, readouts, and levers you can use so your code can change the page. I repeat, what's the DOM? The DOM is a collection of buttons, levers, and readouts, also known as an interface. So the DOM is an interface your code can use to manipulate the page. Okay? So now I'm going to start a thread. I'm going to start a thread, and you're going to give me the definition of the DOM. Before you forget, this is turning the rock to dust. Passively listening accomplishes nothing. Okay, loving it, loving it, loving it. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Exactly. The DOM is an interface. And what is an interface? An interface is a collection of buttons, levers, and readouts your code can use to manipulate the page. Okay. So what's the story with the interface? Think your car. Your car has lots of electronics, has cylinders, has an oil pan, has, gosh, many systems, right? You as a driver do not interact with these systems directly. You have a dashboard and a steering wheel and a bunch of pedals. That's your interface. That's your interface. Okay? So the page provides you an interface, provides your code with an interface. So your code can drive the page. That interface is the DOM. Okay, great job. Now, the DOM takes the shape of an object, a very big object. All right, so we can actually turn to the guided project if I can find it. All right, here we go. So let's pop a terminal. You should learn the shortcut to pop a JavaScript console. All right, so if not, you can right click, inspect element, and then make sure you're in the console. All right. Now, we are going to try a few things in the interactive JavaScript console. All right. So we're going to find the DOM. The DOM is a global variable. All right. And where are all global variables? Global variables are on the Windows object. Try this out. Try this out. Create a variable called foo right in the console. Yes, right in the console. It contains a string called foo. Okay. This is a top level variable. All right. And the global object which contains all variables is called window. All right. So all the global variables are properties of this window object. So if you declare a foo using var, all right, you can do window.foo, and window.foo is the foo string. All right. Document is another global variable we have on Windows. So we can do window.document. All right. Or we can simply do document. The same way we can simply do foo. These are global top-level variables. All right. Cool. So after these shenanigans, I'm going to use Control L to clean up my console. And let's go back to document. All right. If we expand document, we see a representation of the HTML, it seems like. All right. So this is not what we want. We discussed that the DOM, this interface your code can use to manipulate the page, is a very big object. Right? So we're going to use a special flavor console log to see all the properties on this document thing. All right? So everybody, console.dir takes objects and it will log out its properties. Document. All right, let's console.dir document. This is the interface. This is the DOM right here, okay? And if you expand it now, you see, we said it was a very big object, right? Okay, take a quick look. Scroll, take a quick look. I'm gonna, yeah, it's just ridiculous. Okay. Yeah. Huge. All right, do not be intimidated. Do not be intimidated. So let's see if we can find anything familiar. So document.url would yield this localhost 1234 or whatever your URL happened to be. Let's see if we can find anything else of interest. Oh, check it out. This all here is what a collection, an HTML all collection, I wonder what that is, right? But it's clearly some sort of list, right? And this list contains all the elements on the page. Isn't that interesting, right? It seems like this particular page has 26 elements going on there, okay? You can see the HTML tag, the head tag, the meta tag, the body tag, right? And then we're starting seeing divs and things like that. So document.all is kind of like a shortcut to all the elements on the page, right? So the DOM has many shortcuts like that. So let's console.dir document once more. Let's see what other things of interest are there. Base URI, I'm not clear on the difference between base URI and URL. I should Google it. I'm sure I know you would. And then another shortcut to the body of the page. Now that's interesting. Character set, child nodes, and children. All right, so what would child nodes and children, that looks like similar stuff. I wonder what the difference is between child nodes and children. Okay. What else is there? Doc type, more URLs, the domain, localhost. Okay. Lots of images. So the DOM gives you immediately kind of a shortcut to all the images on the page, right? Another strange collection, all right? So let's try all of these collections we know about. Document.all, try it out. Document.all, document.children, okay. Document.images, was it? Images, okay. Document.links, what does it exist? I kind of remember, yeah. So this DOM object gives us a bunch of shortcuts to different collections of things that exist on the page, okay? I'm looking at Slido, looking for fresh questions. Harry is asking, do we do a pull request? Nah, you don't need a pull request or anything like that. Just make sure you don't fork the repo. Clone without forking. We haven't written any code yet, but if you got lost, if you fork, you won't be able to sync. All right. More things we have in the DOM. Document.title, right? If we take a look at document.title, we can see DOM1 matching what it says there in the tab. Now, we said the DOM was like readouts, levers, and switches, right? So our car shows the speed, but you can also change the speed. Does that make sense? Your interface gives you the means to understand what's going on, but they also give you the means to change things, all right? So if we can do document.title and get the title through the DOM, we can also set a title using the DOM, right? We can do document.title equals some new title, like DOM is fun, right? Hit enter, and you will see the tab changes its text. And if we recover document.title, now evaluates to DOM is fun, right? So the document itself and elements we will grab individual elements on the page to change them, all right? Oftentimes we can list something using dot notation, all right? But then we can also change that particular project using dot notation, right? Doing document.title equals and set it to something else. And we can make immediate changes on the page, okay? How much can you change with a DOM? With a DOM, you can change pretty much anything except for like style sheets, right? So your style sheets have kind of like a different DOM, and the browser uses both these DOMs, the regular DOM and the CSS DOM, uses both those DOMs to render the page. Does that mean we cannot do styling through the DOM? We can absolutely do styling through the DOM, because with the DOM, we can flip class names on individual elements. And as you know from Unit 1, dynamically changing a class name on an element, that'll result in different CSS functioning on that element, all right? Cool. Matt asks, why does my HTML collection have 28 elements and yours only has 26? I'm not sure. Let's do document dot all, was it? I got 26. Let's do document dot children. Just one. No, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Okay, let's try document. I'm not sure. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. The important thing to note is that with a DOM, we very commonly use collections of things, collections of elements, right? This brings us back to the first objective here on Training Kit. The DOM gives us access to different kinds of nodes, right? So we have been playing with the top of the tree. This is like one kind of node, right? So document is a node of type document, okay? Now we have all these elements of the page, and those are nodes that are elements. So there are like different types of nodes on the page, right? And they have this tree-like structure going on to them, tree-like structure. And then we also have pieces of text, for example, right? That's a different kind of node. Although as soon as we grab an element, if it contains text, we can change it through the element itself. Rarely do we need to deal directly with nodes of type text, all right? We deal with the document object very often, and 99% of the time is spent grabbing individual elements and doing stuff to them. Does that make sense? So the whole notion that there are different kinds of nodes in the DOM, and we can even find out how many types of nodes are in the DOM by Googling MDN, right? We want to do MDN because that's, for now, our preferred source for all things JavaScript and the DOM and things like that. And then let's Google types of nodes in the DOM. And the very first result gives us a list here of all the different types of nodes, okay? So elements are nodes of type 1, right? Pieces of text are nodes of type 3, right? Comments are nodes of type 8. So each type has like a number associated with it, right? The document node is of type 1, 9, right? Can we see this stuff in the console? Can we see this stuff in the console the way we were doing before? We totally can, right? So we can do document.node type. Anyone remembers what number is associated to document itself, what type of node it is? Bam, 9. Yes, Sam. Okay, so what about, I don't know, document body? Remember how document had a shortcut to the body element? just by doing document body. If we do document body.node type, who remembers what number is associated with elements? The body is just another tag, just another element. Yes. Actually, node type, I misspelled. Okay. Number 1, node name will give you kind of like the name of the tag in all caps, just like that. All right. Cool. Now let's and again, most of the time you will be dealing with elements, right? With elements, but you must be aware that there are other node types. You must be aware that there are different types of nodes, because our collections, remember those collections of elements we saw earlier? Well, some of those collections only display elements, but there exist other kinds of collections that display any type of node, right? So for example, back to the page. And what time is it? Ooh, it's almost time for a break. Okay, back to the page. Back to the page. So let's do document.body.children, right? Let's do document body children. If you can spell. Okay, document body children. All right, HTML collection. It has 2 things. All right. Let's do document.body.child nodes. And we get a different kind of collection. All right. So document body children only shows 2 elements nested right inside document body, which are header and div card group, right? So the body tag has 2 elements directly nested inside, this header and this div, which is a class name of card group. We can check that by looking at the HTML. And we only got 2 of them, whereas child node displays elements and nodes of other type. For example, this text node, why is it showing before header? Because if we take a quick look at the HTML, you can see that, as we saw, body has only 2 elements directly nested inside, right? This is inside of source, find index HTML, find the body tag, confirm that as far as children goes, there's only 2 elements, right? But we added a new line character between the body and header, so we could, jump it to the next line. If I do it like this, then I'm removing that new line character, so that node of type text that was between body and header is not there anymore, right? So this piece of text here was simply the new line character between right before the header, right? If we do document body child nodes again, and well, we're still, okay, all right. So why are you doing that to me? Or do we still have any? Yeah, it's still finding a piece of text between the body and the header. Okay, naughty. Okay, my friends, time for a break before we collapse. Oh, did I not save the HTML? I do have autosave on, right? I'm not sure what's up. I'm not sure what's up. Okay, let me see. Let me do document body child nodes. Grab me the first one. Okay, so this is the node, which we don't know what it is. Okay, so let's take a look. What are you? It's a new line. It's a new line character. What? But I took it out. What gives? Not sure. Not sure. I'm going to kill my start script because I suspect the start script is not recompiling the project, and that can happen. So I'm going to highlight this terminal and Control C to kill the start script. Control L to clean my window, and then the up arrow to recover my npm start, run it again. I'm determined here. Okay, hover, follow link, pop the terminal, document body child nodes. There you go. My start script was choking and wasn't really recompiling the project, or perhaps I should have empty cache and hard reload. I don't know. Okay, after this little bit of troubleshooting, let's take a break and go back with query selector and query selector all, and we still have lots to do. See you in 5.
Ja,
Okay, we are back in business. Welcome back, everybody. Okay, so would we survive a job interview where we were asked to talk about the DOM? Could we give a description of the DOM? Like what it is, what's it for? Interface, or code, change the page. Okay. Of course, in order for our code to be able to use the DOM to change the page, we need to find elements to change. And we have taken a look at a bunch of different techniques, right? Like for example, we can traverse the DOM using dot notation, right? Like document.body. That gives us, okay, the body, right? And you can see, as we discussed, the body has 2 children only, right? And we can see that by document.body.children. It's an HTML collection. It's not an array. It's similar to an array, right? But it is not an array. So it doesn't have reduce. There's no reduce inside HTML collections. You probably don't even have map or anything like that, okay? It is not a real array, but it looks like one. And you can see .children contains the header and this div with the card group, right? So yeah, okay, cool. So we could traverse the DOM using square bracket notation. How do we get to the header? We can do document document body .children, grab me the first, right? And there's the header. Sweet. Okay. Expand the header, and we can see it also in turn has 2 children, right? So the logo and then nav, right? And we can keep going. Document.body.children, first one, .children, and give me the first one. Okay, that would take me into the div, I hope, right? This is rather awkward and difficult. Okay, so there's the div. Okay, say I want to change the heading. I want to change the heading using the DOM. We're getting there. I'm going to clean up my terminal and do it again. Okay, document body .children first position .children first position .children second position. That's the heading. That's the H1. Oh gosh, if I'm able to type it. Children. This is terrible, isn't it? There's the H1. There's the H1. We traversed the DOM all the way down to the heading. Isn't that awesome? I mean, it's terrible, but awesome at the same time, like so many things in life. Now that we have the heading, we can change its text, right? You know how text are nodes of a different kind, but you rarely have to deal directly with nodes of type text. We have the element right here. We could even save it into a variable. You could do var heading and save all of that into a variable. And of course, we could do all of this inside of our code. We're just experimenting here, okay? So heading, of course, is the heading, okay? But this is Chrome trying to prevent us from having a heart attack. If you want to see what really is inside the heading, you have to console.dir the heading, okay? And now we can have a proper heart attack looking at all the properties a DOM node of type element actually contains, right? Some are familiar because they also existed inside a document, right? Yeah, I'm going to collapse that for the sake of our cardiac health, all right? And now we are in a position to change the text of the heading. So let's do heading dot text content, and we are going to set that to be lambda dog instead of lambda cat. Set it, and bam. Right? if you did not save it into a variable, you could simply do document body children first, children second, dot text content, and set it to something different like lambda cat dog. Okay. Oh gosh, that's squirrel. Bam. All right. So to be clear, through the DOM, and this is just one way, one possible way to traverse the DOM. There's many ways we can use dot notation to reach what we want. All right. So through the DOM, we have access to every little element anywhere on the page, right? But this is rather awful, and we don't want to be traversing the DOM using this technique, correct? I mean, come on. So enter objective number 2, using DOM selectors, okay? And we are going to focus our attention on the most modern ones. I'll try to demo some of the old ones, right? But the important teaching here when we're discussing selectors is that there's 2 very different things these selectors are going to give us, and we need to be crystal clear on what is it. So sometimes we will select elements like an H1, right? Sometimes we will select a particular element on the page, but other times we will select collections of elements. Right? And the worst thing that can happen to us is that we confuse collections of elements and elements, right? So for example, on an element, we can do text content, as you saw, right? We can do text content and set the text content to be something different, right? You can do that on elements. You cannot set text content on a collection of elements. That makes no sense. So we also need to be aware. We need to be aware of what it is we're dealing with, right? And in order to learn that, we will super focus our attention on these 2, query selector and query selector all. One is going to return an element and the other a collection. Guess which is which. Okay, so yeah, so so always close your eyes, focus. Whenever you're using these, you'll be like, oh, what am I after? Am I after a collection of elements, or am I after a single element? Okay. Now, let's take this. Let's try query selector. Let's try query selector using the code, right? So we are going to try and capture. We're going to try to capture this this card here. All right, all of it. All right. And we can see this card, which corresponds to this thing on the page, right? The cat. This card has a class name of card, and we are going to use that class name to try and find this card. All right. So everybody, pop open the source folder, find your index.js, and we are going to do exercise number 1. We're going to make a clone of the div that card, and we're going to append it to div.cardGroup, which is the parent. So we're going to duplicate this card just using the DOM, all right, and query selector. So everybody, let's make a variable const called, how would you name, of course it's broken now. How do we name that card? Card. Oh, first card. I don't know. Let's call it first card, because there could be many. There could be many. First card. That is equal to query selector, because we don't want to do the awful traversing, right? Document.querySelector, my bad. Query selector is a method. Query selector is a method. The document has this method, but also elements have this method, right? So you can call query selector on document itself like we're doing, or you can call it on elements once we have elements. And there goes a CSS selector targeting the element, right? So in this case, let's do .card. if you want to know what you got, you can always console log first card. Save away your changes. Go back to the page. Let's find a console. And there's the card, the whole thing. Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Of course, this is a CSS selector, right? So dot, as you know, symbolizes class name. We can use any valid CSS selector in there, right? And everything, all the syntax you know, like even pseudo classes like nth of type 1, right? This means, hey, of whatever elements have the card class name, grab me the first one, right? In case there were many, right? So all your CSS selectors work, right? Now, what if we type something that doesn't exist on the page? What if we type something that doesn't exist on the page? Try it out and tell me on Slack what happens. What do we get? What do we get? Creating a thread. Oh gosh, no. Joseph, you were too fast for me. Okay, so very important. If the selector is not existing on the page, we get null, all right? So excellent, excellent, excellent. So what if there were several elements matching the selector? That's the third scenario. The first scenario is yeah, we have one card and it grabs us, it gets us the card, right? And if the selector doesn't exist, we get a big null, right? But what if we match multiple things? What if we match multiple things with query selector? What do we get? Any ideas? For example, let's match something that's going to match multiple things. I'm going to match div. Div is this is a valid CSS selector. What do you think we're going to get? Chase says undefined. Wes says the first one. I'm not sure. Experimentation. The answer is always experimentation. Document, query selector, something that's going to match multiple things for sure, because there's multiple divs on the page, right? Let's take a look. Oh, okay. So yeah, you were right. You get the very first one of whatever. If you're matching multiple things, you get the first one. So there's three scenarios. You get either an element or null, and the first match if several elements match the CSS selector. So query selector in no circumstance is ever going to give you a collection. With query selector, you're either going to get an element or null. All right. So let's get back to .card. Okay. And now let's do the copying operation. Let's do the copy and appending. So we're going to create a new variable called const copy of first card. And let's have that be first card dot clone node. This is a method. This is not a property. This is a method. And if you want to copy everything inside of the node, you pass true in there. Okay. Now, of course, let's console log copy of first element. Copy of first card. Did it work? Did it work? Did it work? Taking it for a drive, it seems to have worked, right? So how do we, now that we have a clone going on, how do we append it? How do we append it right beside right beside the existing card, right? So we need to take a look at the parent, right? So let's inspect element, and we can see cards are inside of a card group. So now all we have to do is find the card group in the DOM and append our clone. All right. So first we need var const card container, and I'm gonna let you do the right hand side. Right? I'm typing a null because I expect you to use query selector. All right, use query selector to grab the parent element of the cards. All right, creating a thread. I love giving you all the work. Grab the parent. And of course, we're going to console log it right after. I'm still letting you work on the problem. All right. Okay. So I do document query selector, and here's a little trick, right? So you don't type as much, right? So you can do docu, and VS Code is already suggesting me stuff, right? With document in first position, so I can hit enter, right? And then I can do dot and type something like qui cell, right? So I typed these little pieces of the word, and that narrowed down all possible, So here's VS Code. Give me a hint by simply, you type Q, that narrows down the result somewhat, and query, and then cell, and that narrows it down a whole lot, right? And hit enter. And now valid CSS selector, card group, I think it is, right? Log it to the console, and there is the card group with the card inside. Excellent. Right. Now, remember when I said there were like many shortcuts in the DOM? We had the first card already. On the first card, we could have done parent element, right? So we could have done, I'm going to do it real quick. I'm going to delete it right after, right? But I'm going to do parent is first card dot parent element. See that? This would have given me this. So the DOM is full of shortcuts, So in order to grab the parent, I needn't have used query selector necessarily if I already had first card, because we could have just done parent element, right? And I don't. It's not even a method. It's a property. So you don't need to invoke it or anything like that. Okay, cool. All right, do we have time before the break? We do have a couple of minutes, right? So I'm gonna let you have fun with, well, no, before, we never copied the clone. So let's do card container dot append child, right? And pass the copy of first card. We cannot have the same DOM element in two places of the DOM. Let me repeat. We cannot have the same DOM element in two places of the DOM. That's why we create a clone. And once we have a clone, we append it wherever we want to append it. Okay. So append child is a method you can find on document or on elements, similar to query selector. It takes the DOM element you wish to append to this particular parent, and there you have it, right? So so you're beginning to see like this is going to be really powerful, right? Like really, really powerful. If we can dynamically multiply stuff in just a couple lines of code, this is going to be way more efficient than modifying index HTML. Cool. Looking at the Slido, Maxwell is asking, if we are manipulating the render via the in-browser console, are the changes actually implemented, or is it more? So the console, okay, so I get this question sometimes. So use the console heavily to experiment with syntax. Use the console heavily to play with the syntax of new methods and things, right? So yeah, we're just learning new syntax, exploring the DOM, right? It's very convenient, very direct, and very, very fast, right? That's why I would do it. Of course, any changes we do here, they don't stick. If you do document.title and you change that to be dog, right? It changed here, but if we reload the page, of course, any change, any DOM manipulation you do to the page via the console is not going to stick. It's just front end. We're just manipulating this representation here on a local, right? Someone's asking, shouldn't Git fetch and Git reset update my code in VS Code? It should, right? So now that I have added well, actually, isn't, let me see, is the script, is my superscript, where's my superscript? What? That's weird. Great call. For some reason, I don't think it was pushing changes to the, I don't think it was pushing changes. Okay, so it ought to be working now. Apologies. Great call. Max, thank you. And Harry, can this be used for like when a user adds an image or comment? Absolutely. The DOM, through the DOM, you have absolute power over the page. And again, short of changing your style sheets, you can pretty much change anything on the page. Okay. You can add images, or you can change the source attribute of an image so that it displays a different image, right? We'll take a look at manipulating elements as soon as we get back from the break. Time flies when you have so much fun, doesn't it? Starting a timer. See you in 5, my friends. All right, my friends, we are back in business and we have some activity on this in the Slido. So let's take a look. Okay, Matt, when I enter card container copy of first card, it makes a copy as I want. So you have no problem making your first copy. But then when I type that line again and again, it doesn't make any more cats, right? So basically what you're trying is this. Right, and this is not going to work because the same node cannot be in two different places at once, right? So we would have to create another clone and then append that another clone, right? That is why doing append child multiple times with the same copy is not going to work, right? Excellent question. Yeah, you're my favorite student for all time until I find a new one. Just because you experimented and tried that out, all right? Now, Juan says, what are the use cases of the DOM? Why would you use it over just changing things through VS Code? Well, we are changing things through VS Code. It's just, I think you what I understand, why would we change the page with code instead of just coming to the index.html and copying and pasting the I'm making that assumption, Juan. Why would we turn to the JavaScript to dynamically construct pages instead of simply doing it in the index.html? So that requires a little history lesson. All right. So yeah, you asked for it. Now, imagine this is a client like Chrome on your desktop computer. Historically, whenever you wanted a web page of cats, you would hit cats.com, and this request would reach a server, right? Which specializes in cats and returns to the client a page, right? Some index.html, perhaps index.html, back to the client, and then the client renders it. End of the story. Okay, so in this paradigm, the server fully constructs the HTML. So in that would be done with PHP and things like that. So there were times in the 90s when they would pay you a fortune just to be able to write HTML and CSS. Okay, so that is not the case anymore. So you would have a PHP server, perhaps, constructing complete pages with all of the markup that was required, and then the browser would just passively render it. End of the story. Okay. Now, the web evolved, and there were many kinds of devices that would consume data, right? Our phone, our refrigerator, or wearables, browsers on all kinds of mobile and desktop devices. So for certain applications, it was less practical to have a server serving fully constructed pages, right? This also required a full reload of the page whenever we wanted to see something different, right? So web pages did not feel like desktop applications at all right? So what happens now with single page applications is that let me see if I can get my eraser working. Okay, so what happens with single page applications, which is a buzzword we will mention often, is that now cats.com serves a very lean HTML page, which is not going to ever change. Okay, so but this page includes a JavaScript, and this JavaScript is able to make a request to data.cats.com, and that is a different server which deals in data only, right? So the JavaScript gets the data back and uses it to make DOM surgery, the kind of DOM surgery we've started learning about. The JavaScript uses that raw data to perform DOM surgery on the page and constructs the page on the front end. All right. So now This means that the value, which is the data, is the value of a thing a company has. Okay, we can have dedicated servers that serve the data to all kinds of different devices, right? So the data can be decoupled from, from the website. Okay, so what we have to learn, right now, what we're learning today is this part where our local JavaScript performs DOM surgery on the page, right? So we're not using data from a data server quite yet, but we will do that this week. Okay. Cool. Thomas, my local host has stopped updating when I save. Yeah. So you can kill your start script by Control-C, clean, up arrow, npm start again, see if that fixes it. Okay. Peter, when using git fetch, do you stay on your personal branch or switch to the main? No, you can, whichever you prefer. I would leave the main branch alone. I would stay on a named branch through the duration of the lecture. You don't need to change branches or anything like that. At the beginning of the lecture, branch out and then reset from there. Okay, my friends. So query selector gets us the first match or null. All right. Now, you can see how it can be used to grab a card, and then we used clone node to duplicate it. All right. We used query selector again to grab the parent, although we found that there were other shortcuts we could have used. And then we, on the parent, we ran append child to copy the node to the DOM. Okay. Now, what about query selector all? Now that we have two cards, we could use query selector all to grab all of them, right? So we could do const cards, plural, very important, plural, right? Document dot query cell all, right? So you see what I'm actually typing so that I will get what I want, right? Because I don't want to be typing all of that. And then the same selector we used before, card, right? Now the difference between query selector all is that in query selector all never gives us null, never, right? So if it can't find it, it will give you an empty list, right? But query selector all always gives us a list, right? So what do we do with lists of elements? Let's console log this cards variable. Okay, confirm. Oh, come on, my npm start choked again. Oh, here we have it. Okay. So query selector all gets us a list, and you can see now we have two actual elements with a class name of card, right? Of course. So far so good. With now that we have a collection, we can do several things. We could do cards second position using, I don't know. We could grab one card. This would be the first card, all right? And this would be the second card. And now we have an element. Right? So we could do const second card. We could do equal cards second position. That's 0 index, right? So if we console log the second card, I hope it auto updated. There it is, right? Well, we can't tell the difference between the two cards because they're identical, but yeah, okay. More things we can do with a collection of cards. We can loop over the collection of cards, right? So we could do something like cards.forEach, right? The list returned by query selector all has a for each, all right? So we could, for each card, we could do things. we could console log card, something like that. And now you see 2 console logs. We see both cards being logged out. Right? But of course, the elements can use query selector. It's not only a thing you can use in documents. So we could grab the h1 of each card. We could do something like const h1. Try to keep up with me. Do your best. I'll pause. I'll pause to let you catch up. We could do card.querySelector. And the advantage of using query selector on an element instead of document is that it's not going to find it's not going to this CSS selector can be very vague, something like that, right? And you'd be like, oh, but this is a terrible CSS selector. It could grab anything on the page. Well, no, it can't. Query selector h1 is not going to grab just any h1 on the page. It's only ever going to grab something within the card, because we called query selector on the card, right? Actually, I don't remember if these cats actually have an h1. Maybe they were h2s. Yeah, they're h2s and h3s. There's no h1 actually, right? So this should be null. Console log h1. Check it out. Check it out. Couple nulls. We're still inside the loop, okay? So we messed up our selector. There's no h1s. We messed up everything. Let me just another little. Yeah, I'll turn to Slido because this gives you the opportunity to catch up with me, okay? How can we look at the CSS of a web page we don't have locally? For example, to do DOM surgery and find the class name, you can always inspect element. Okay, so the easiest is just inspect element, and then you can find the markup and the styles associated. For example, here we have the h2 of one of the cards, and here we can see markup and CSS. So we can see what class names are relevant. And here it tells you where to find the style. Okay, so we're going to use DOM surgery to change class names and style that way. All right. Sam, I thought you said that the lists returned from query selector all were not actually arrays, so we cannot use array methods. That is true, but these collections, some of these collections actually have a for each. All right, so some of these collections have a for each. They don't have map and they don't have reduce. They don't have all of that, right? But here's the good news: you can make a real array out of one of these non-arrays, right? I'll show you that in a second. Okay, so let's change our code by changing those h1s to h2s, right? So for each card, grab the h2, console log it. There it is. Okay? And we can do h2.text content and set that to be, I don't know, dog. All right. Gosh. And okay. And you can see both the headings on all cards. Of course, this is, you're not going to do it like this, right? Yeah, because you probably don't want all cards to have identical names, right? But you see the potential. You see the potential that you have an array of headings, and then you loop, and then you assign a different text content to each, and things like that. What was the shortcut you used to edit all the h1s to h1 simultaneously? Yeah, okay. So if you want to edit several identical pieces of text at once, all you got to do is highlight the first by double-clicking, and then on Windows, you do Control-D, and on Mac, you do Command-D. Bam, bam. Now we have 3 blinking cursors, and we can do H3 instead of H2. Change all of them at the same time. And you can see now it says dog here, because this is an H3 actually, or DOM surgery is fun. Okay. Okay. Could do const h2 equals card dot query selector h2, and then we set the content on both those things, h2 dot text content equals lambda dog. I don't know, lambda dog. Right? See that? I'll give you a few seconds to catch up with me. And that's what query selector all is used, all right, on a collection of elements, because that's what query selector all gives us. We can loop, and then at each iteration, we can do DOM surgery on the individual thing, okay? So do not try to set text content on a collection. That's never going to work, right? That's never going to work. More questions. So on a page, the text being entered on cards should be some user entered information. Well, actually, it'll be data from a server. It'll be data from a server, right? So you would have some data from this data server, which we discussed, all right? So let's simulate it here. We would have a data, and then, you know, it would be an array of cards, and then each, you know, we have a heading of, you know, dog 1, and a heading. This is just, you know, you don't need to copy this. You don't need to copy this. But realistically, you will have data from a server giving you the information you need to put on the page. Okay, so back down here inside our loop, inside of for each, instead of hard coding this identical thing on both headings, we would use the data from the server, right? So we would use the second argument here, index, and then we would do, let's deal with the headings only to make things less confusing. And we would do data, square bracket notation, IDX, oh gosh, I don't, okay, dot heading, or something like that, okay? So you see what I'm doing? Inside the loop, I have each card, and I have the index, the you know, first iteration IDX is 0, second iteration IDX is 1, right? These are just indices. So for each card, grab the H2 and set its text content to be, you know, whatever element of the array dot. So this is a more realistic example of how things play out really. These pieces of text, which are just simulated inside the file, actually come from a data server. And the whole point of our DOM surgery is using JavaScript to write that server information on the page. Okay. Cool. Could you assign a different font size? Oh gosh, yes. And we will. We're desperately behind, actually. So we better move on. I don't want to cut into your lunchtime. I promise we'll get to everything, right? Just a final word. Const real array of cards, right? If you're desperate and you want reduce for whatever reason, you can make an actual array with all its goodies off of one of these. I don't want to call them fake arrays. They're just, you know, they're meant to be used with languages, not just JavaScript, but any language, right? So that's why they're not proper JavaScript arrays, but you can make one by using the array constructor. The array constructor has a static method, and it's called a static method because it hangs off of the constructor. right? And you can make an array from cards. Boom, right? So you can always do a real array of cards, array from the none. Okay, and now we have, we have a real array, a real array of cards with reduce, with map, with everything. Okay, so you're not losing out ever. Okay. Oh man. Oh gosh, we're a little bit behind. We're a little bit behind. Okay. So I'm going to let you practice. I'm going to let you grab all of these, right? Some of these things we kind of already have, but I'm going to ask you to grab from the second card, just to make it a little bit more interesting. So of course, the header doesn't belong to any card, right? The header is the header of the header element of the page, right? So grab that with Quiz Selector, and you can, and this also is, but this is also, so these two pieces are on the page, and these pieces, I want you to grab them from the second card, not the first one, just to make things a little bit more interesting. I'm going to let you a few minutes to do that. There's already a thread on Slack. It's all right if you don't have nearly enough time to go through all of these. Okay, my friends, it's about time for our last break of the day, and only Joshua has posted selectors. I'm heartbroken. Then again, Joshua, you're using query selector all? Okay, I'll have to study your answers. Uh, we To get individual elements, I don't see us using query selector all necessarily. But the selectors are the okay, so a bunch of you are are posting answers. Let's take a look at them right after the break. See you in 5. Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. All right, here we go. I'm going to steal from James. So I'm moving to the thread, and let's take a look. I trust James so much, I'm just going to replace all of my code with his. All right. And James is doing, okay, header, document, query selector, the header, right? That would make sense because the header is simply a header element. There's just one on the page, so I guess this is fine, right? I'm just gonna get rid of the semicolon just to be consistent with my own style. You keep your semicolons, that is what you do. Although eventually you will just have to do whatever your company tells you to do. And then, a logo title, query selector. Okay, so there's a unique ID on the logo title. Let's inspect element, confirm. And it is the truth. It is the truth. It's an H1. It's the only H1 on the page with a unique ID. So that was kind of easy. Great job. Now, this makes me sad because I was hoping to kind of force you to use very complicated CSS selectors to grab elements from the second card, but you pretty much got around the whole problem by simply doing card equals second card because we already had the second card. I mean, that is just evil. That is just evil, but it works. This is perfectly acceptable. So card and second card, to be clear, they are variables pointing to the same thing. Now, the card image, we can call query selector on the second card only, right? Good. Card title, H2, good. Subtitle, H3, okay, cool. The text, apparently the text here has a class name of card text. Let's inspect element real quick and confirm true. That is the truth. It's a paragraph with a card text class name, right? So if you wanted to be more specific or something, you could always do P. Give me the paragraph with this class name. Okay, that looks good. The first link. All right, so you could, okay, that works. Oh, come on. What? You needn't, okay, so you needn't avoid more complicated query selectors. I mean, right? So we can do, okay, that was probably correct, right? Let's do it a little bit differently. Let's do in of type 2. This is not 0 indexed, right? So hopefully this gets us the the second anchor tag within its parent, right? So cool. I was hoping for more sophisticated CSS selectors, but great job, James. Great job. Any questions regarding these selectors, right? Cool. We're not going to console log all of them one by one. Let's just hope for the best for now. Exercise 3, changing the text content. You already know how to do, but I'm going to give you 1 minute or so to change the text content of everything. The heading on the second card, the subheading on the second card, the paragraph on the second card, and the text, the visible text of these two links, right? Everything is exercise number 3. You can use dot notation and set the text content of the relevant pieces. And I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to do that. We're desperately late today. You can set all of that to whatever you want. All right, so let's see what we got. I know it's a big ask to change all those texts so quickly. Let's steal from Brendan. Brendan is going to make our lives easier. So I'm just going to, and by the way, now we will see if those selectors by James are legit. Okay, paste all of that. Ooh, check it out. Whoa, did you see that? Did you see that? Pretty amazing, pretty amazing. Excellent. So this kind of proves that James CSS selectors were totally legit. Okay, great job. As you can see, changing text content on individual elements is a piece of cake. The only possible downfall would be if you attempted to change the text content of a collection of elements. That would have no effect, right? It would fail silently. It wouldn't even be an error, which is the worst thing that can happen. You would add a property called text content to that collection of elements, and it would have no visible effect on the page. So careful, very careful with that. Now, for exercise number 4, and this is going to be piece of cake also, I promise. Accessing and changing element attributes with dot notation. All right, so there's 2 techniques, and you've already seen dot notation, right? So for example, say we want to change the image of the second card, right? With dot notation. We have a reference to the image already, right? So it would be card image, and what is the, okay, and what is the attribute we're trying to change on this element? Well, the source, right? So any attribute on an image, on an element, you can simply set the same way you set text content, right? You can see as soon as we set the card image dot source attribute to the empty string, the image breaks. Could someone be so kind to find us an image? Bing is good for images. Dog. Images. Okay, let's try that one. Let's copy image address, and bam. Let's see if that works. Beautiful, right? See that? So this is just an attribute on the element, right? The same attributes we write with raw HTML, we can set them in JavaScript using dot notation, right? Or we can use the set attribute method also on elements, right? So we could do card image dot set attribute. Set attribute is not a property. It's a method now, right? And it takes 2 arguments. First, the attribute we intend to overwrite, and then the value for this attribute. You can see now that we're setting the image source to be empty string, the image goes back to broken, right? So let's get us a different dog this time. Let's get this one. Copy image address. Okay, come back here. Boom. And boom. All right. So it's too fast for us to see, but first the JavaScript sets the first image using dot notation, right? But then we use the set attribute method on elements. It's not an image thing. It's an element thing, right? So we can use these to change attributes, these techniques with any kind of element, right? Does that make sense? Now to Meg's question. I can see Meg on Slido. Could you assign a different font size or color for all the H2s, right? That falls into the changing the style department. And there are several different ways we can change style, right? So we could use inline styles, and I'll show you how in a second, or we would juggle the class name on an element, right? So I don't know. there's a class name on this page which will turn the background color to blue, right? So there's there's the sky class name should turn background color to blue, right? You can't see the end of the line. Apologies for that. Okay, so let's just swap a class name on an element, right? And we could do something like card dot set attribute, and we could do class, and then we could do sky, right? We could do something like, oh, actually, it actually breaks. I don't know what happened. Oh, of course it broke because I messed up. I smashed any other class names that might have been there, right? So let me comment that out. Go back to working. In the card, oh, it only actually had, oh, of course, I'm smashing the card class name, and we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that, right? So you can see the beginnings of awkwardness, right? So set attribute kind of sucks to set class names because I have to do card space class, right? And where's my blue? Inspect element. Actually, where's my blue? Where's my blue? So you can see how set attribute or dot notation kind of sucks for class names, right? So there's a dedicated utility for juggling class names on an element, right? I'm still curious what did I do wrong here? Let's set a different attribute. Let's set an ID of sky. There it is. That did work. So let's set class of sky. Yeah, that did work. What happens with two different words? Card space class. Yeah, it doesn't work. It just uses the first one, right? So card, it just uses the first one. So this absolutely sucks. So we would have to kind of like, this absolutely sucks. We would have to do it in two separate lines. Oh, wait. Class, I'm messing things up. Class of card space sky. There we go. Oh gosh, I apologize. I must be totally brain fried, right? So this is the syntax that sucks, right? Now I'm going to show you the syntax that rocks for juggling class names. You would do card.class list, camel case. And this class list thing is an object with methods, like for example, add, right? Now we can add a class name of sky, and it adds it, right? Without the fuss, without all the fuss we went through. I apologize for that. Okay, and of course the CSS is still not kicking in, and that is kind of sad. Let's try it on a different element. Header.classList.add sky. It must be, yeah, there you go. So there must be some other CSS that is stronger. Okay, so but you can see we added the class name of sky to the header via class list, and you can see how that did work. We couldn't do it on the card because, yeah, some other rule was winning the struggle of the cascade. Okay, the cascade is a struggle, and yeah, okay. The same way we can remove class names using a similar technique. Header.classList.remove sky, right? From the header this time. And you can see it goes back to the original. And there's the third one we can use, which is toggle on class list, on the element, All right, let's just do it. This is just something super annoying. That's going to set an interval. It's going to use set interval there. Every second, we're going to toggle that sky class name. Header dot class list dot toggle the sky class name. You can see now it begins to blink, right? So, okay. So this is so horrible. Okay. Now you know why I'm not a designer. But the point is, if you ever need to juggle class names on an element, do not use dot notation, do not use set attribute, use class list instead because of all these goodies that it has, right? And it never breaks. It never breaks. It's not like, what if you add a class name that's already there? It's not going to add it twice. What if you remove a class name that isn't there in the first place? It's not going to break. It's not going to do anything, right? So it's very robust, very easy to use. It takes the class name straight up, no dots or anything like that, right? If you put a dot, it'll literally add a class name with a dot in it. So you don't want to do that. Okay. Okay. So now, inline styles. Inline styles is the second way to manipulate the styling via JavaScript, right? And it's and careful because inline styles always win the struggle of the cascade. All right. So if we do something like card.style dot say background color, camel case, right? So this is like the CSS property background color on style. On the element, you want the style. But of course, we cannot do dashes like that. So we do camel case, right? And we can set that to royal blue or whatever, okay? And that has the effect we've been looking for. Okay, Meg, what do you say? How do you feel about changing style via JavaScript? Which system do you prefer? Juggling class names or adding inline styles? If definitely class list, yes. You don't want to be, you don't want to be adding inline styles left and right because inline styles are super strong. They always win the struggle of the cascade. If you need mnemonics to remember what the cascade is, think of the cascade as the struggle. There's a bunch of rules that determine which CSS rule is going to win the struggle, right, for a given element, because there might be multiple rules targeting the same element, right? And you know how inline styles are super heavy, so they win the struggle of the cascade. Think of the cascade as a struggle, all right? Cool. Now, what time is it? We have 3 minutes left. Right, so okay, so number 6, creating new elements. You do not need this for today, right? So you already know everything you need for today, but you can create a new link, right? Using document.createElement, right? Document create element, passing a string of A, because we are going to create a new anchor tag. Now we can use dot notation. This is a review. This is stuff you already know. All right. So we could do new link dot text content and give it a text content of, I don't know, what do we have? Home about contact. All right. Let's create a fourth link for the blog, which nobody reads. All right. And then we can do new link dot href. And here would be the href for your link, right? So now that the link is complete, we need to attach it to the DOM, right? So this, in a similar way we did at the beginning of class, we would find the parent of these links, which ought to be a nav element, Oh, it even has an ID, right? So we can just use that ID. Okay. Oops, apologies. I hate it when that happens. There we go. Okay. So we could do document.querySelector and select by that the octothorpe. Of course, this means ID. Okay. There's, of course, if you've read TriniKit, you know there's get element by ID, which is older, right? You would, I mean, we reviewed query selector and query selector all, and this is what you want for 99.99 of circumstances, right? You have get element by ID, which gives you a single element. You have get elements by tag name, plural, which gives you a collection. So always careful, always careful. But there's no good reason to use these unless you're supporting really ancient browsers, or unless there's some really interesting, peculiar thing about, you know, it's very unlikely you will need to resort to one of the old ones versus query selector all. Okay. Now that we have the element, we can do we can save it into a variable. Well, we don't even need to save it into a variable. We can straight up append child and pass in the new link. Okay. Let's see if that worked. Oh, apologies. And there's our new link, right? So you can see you can add arbitrary pieces of DOM, creating these arbitrary pieces from scratch with document.createElement, filling any text content or attributes they might need, and then appending to wherever it needs to be. Okay. And yeah, and 7, their elements have a dot remove. This, you don't need this. You don't need this for today. So we are done. Going back to Slido for questions. What about toggling IDs? We never toggle IDs. We never toggle IDs. IDs are supposed to be unique on the page for a given page. IDs should be unique and should be forever associated with one particular element, right? So we use IDs to grab elements precisely for testing and things like that. So if you need to set an ID, you can use dot notation, right? So you can do new link.id, and you can set that to log link, right? But it is very, I mean, you never want to just, you don't normally want to toggle an ID on an element, right? So here we can make sure that this link has this unique ID, and there it is, right? So the elements tab is the representation of the DOM, right? As opposed to sources. Inside of sources, you can also find the index.html and everything we've been working on, but that's just the file, and the file never changes, right? Elements actually shows the live DOM, right? And you can manipulate things right in here, Sam, I thought you said, oh, the arrays. Okay, cool. Yeah, Sam, I think that's Sam. This is the question in terms of what if you're dealing with a collection that for whatever reason doesn't have a for each, or doesn't have some array method you like. You can always make a real array out of a, node list returned by query selector all, right, with array from. Okay, my friends, I don't want to take any more of your time because we're already biting into lunchtime. There will be office hours most days, and I will put in the calendar exactly when you have office hours with me. Shoot me a DM if you have any feedback for in terms of lecture. Gabe, you go too fast. Gabe, you go too slow. I'm never gonna get hurt. It's the easiest way to get me to adjust things about the lectures. It's the easiest, most efficient. Just reach out and let me know. And thank you so much for your tremendous effort. See you after lunch.